what fuel are you using and where does it come from. Emissions has the issue of health and global warming, وافتكر الحاجات دي كلها انتوا عارفينها وقريتوها. The question of congestion, gridlock, productivity, and quality of life, and I think this is something we should here in Egypt be very conscious of, لأن إذا كان عندكم في اسكندرية الحالة حبة أحسن من القاهرة، نزلوا القاهرة واتفرجوا على الترافيك بشكل إيه. أنا شخصيا personally كنت بسمع عن النوشن بتاعت الايديا بتاعت gridlock دي، ان everything comes to a standstill، كل الحاجة تشتبك في بعضها وكله يقف، وكنت بفكر فيها على أساس إن هي فكرة intellectual يعني إزاي تحصل؟ مش معقول حاجة زي كده تحصل، أنا كلمة بتتقال ما فهمتهاش كويس غير لما نزلت القاهرة وجربتها. كان في أوقات كنت ببقى واقف المرور 45 دقيقة at a complete standstill، و worse yet إن أنا مش عارف بالظبط إزاي هخلص من الحكاية ديت. لأن if you look at it, there is no way إن دي هتتفك. Gridlock is very important because it has impact on productivity and on your quality of life. Then the question of affordability. كل واحد فينا عاوز بالعربية اللي بتعمل كل حاجة، اللي فيها كل حاجة ثلاثة تعريفة. انتوا طبعا ما تعرفوش تعريفة لأن يعني احنا كنا زمان بنقول كده بثلاثة تعريفة. وبعدين الكلمة اللي احنا لسه قايلينها how much do I have money I have to save and when do I buy عربية العمر. Okay, the most two important issues that I would like to focus on today is the question of emissions and fuel efficiency. Data chart showing the percent reduction in vehicle emissions, light-duty vehicle emissions in the United States in the last 35 years. حتى دي بتوريه في آخر 30 سنة. أو يعني من 70 لحد حوالي 2001 أو 2002. الدنيا اتطورت شوية بعد كده بس the issues are still the same. The tailpipe emissions have been reduced by 99%. And yet this is not enough. So now we are working on what? The last 1%. In Europe, they have worked awfully hard, and in the last 30 years or 35 years, they've gone down about 92 to 95%, and they're working on the last 5% of emissions. ليه هم for the last 5%, وإحنا في أمريكا مثلا was the last 1%, simply because the Europeans have stricter emission standards. Their consciousness of the environment is much more than the American consciousness of the environment. This is historical, economic, cultural, and for many reasons. One is not better than the other, but these are the facts. The thing we get out of those two slides is one thing. إن احنا دلوقتي خدنا الشنك كبيرة قوي of emissions and fuel economy. لأن في الآخر خالص emissions are reduced because you're reducing the amount of fuel you're burning. And then you're obviously doing after treatment, chemical after treatment in the exhaust. But most of it is because you're reducing fuel consumption. So far, we've done the big job. Now you're working on the little stuff. And the little stuff is what always gets us engineers. لأن أنت دلوقتي أو أنت you are splitting hairs. آخر 1% ده is a very complex 1% and is a very expensive 1%. So, given that, one asks the question, what are the technology options that are needed so that we can reduce fuel consumption and reduce emissions? Okay. Think about it this way. It's a question of materials and propulsion. And at a much higher level, as an engineer, you're going to think of the system, as materials and propulsion. Materials can be fuel, and fuel is a material. And on the other hand, the material also can be structural material. What do you make the car out of? Is it going to be made out of aluminum, out of magnesium, out of titanium, out of high-strength steel? The notion is you want to reduce the mass of the vehicle to the extent you can, provided you keep its safety, its structural integrity, its performance, its dynamic structural performance all the same, but you get mass with that vehicle 20–30%. Why? Because the less the mass, the less energy you need to propel it. On the other hand, the fuels is a question of fuel chemical makeup, because some fuels have higher sulfur than others. People have talked about natural gas, and natural gas vehicles are running in many places in the world, and they have their place. People talk about hydrogen and the hydrogen economy, and this is a very important part to hydrogen and the hydrogen economy. Some economists believe that the whole world is going to migrate to a point where what we are doing, we are using hydrogen as our energy source. I want to alert you to the fact that hydrogen is not a fuel. انتوا تعرفوا الحكاية دهيت أكتر مني لأن انتوا الكيمياء بتاعتكم لسه fresh in your minds أكتر مني. إنما hydrogen basically is an energy, it's a medium for energy storage and transportation. And in itself, it doesn't burn as a fuel, إنما it is a fuel carrier. زي بالضبط البطاريات. البطاريات don't generate energy. They're an energy storage device, and they basically store and transport. They don't create, but they store and transport energy. Both those options, though, eventually converge on the propulsion system, and the question then is, because that's the one that has the most to do with utilization of whatever energy that you are providing, and those are the ones that are responsible for whatever emissions the vehicle does. Okay, so now in terms of increased efficiency, we have things such as طبعا انتوا عارفين conventional gasoline diesel, في alternative fueled vehicles اللي هي burns gasoline, as well as things like ethanol. The commercial name بتاعه E85 اللي موجود النهارده في العالم, which is basically from a biomass but not from oil. في hybrids, hybrid parallel and series. Fuel cell-powered vehicles, and fuel cells are coming in because the nice thing about fuel cells, if you can make them work, and you can make them work in a practical way, لو فكرنا كمهندسين مش as purely scientists, then الناتج بتاعها كهرباء to propel the vehicle, والemission بتاعتها مية. Basically, it's an absolutely 100% clean technology. Conventional drive vehicle is simple. نفكر فيها as an engine, a device that launches the vehicle as a clutch or a torque converter, either to multiply torque عشان يدي acceleration, or to disconnect the engine from the transmission so that you can start an engine and not kill it by having a huge inertia behind it. Field accessories, which are air conditioning, power steering, all the great stuff that you guys listen to, and given all the hotel loads, as احنا بنسميها hotel loads, اللي هو الراديو والسي دي وكل الالكترونكس والحاجات دهيت. زمان كانت بتبقى حاجه قد كده، النهارده you're drawing 2 or 3 amps, and 2 or 3 amps from a 14-volt battery is a lot of amps, and that is a significant